You've got a great subject here, but honestly, to tell that story and to pack so much in it, so much history, and for it not to be, it's just not dry at all. And it could be something that's very by the numbers, but it's an amazing piece of storytelling. So I have to say that first of all, it really is. I will sit down a little bit. And then just yourself. So you've got to come to Terry first of all. I mean, it's just I don't know what to say other than you start. Tell us what it's like to see that up on the big screen.
Well, it's just amazing because I'm just one brown baby with many thousands. Many thousands.
Can we just get the other? We have some here. Some other
Yes,
babies.
yeah. I was going to invite them. Yes.
Could anyone stand up?
Yeah, brown babies, put your hands up.
Because there aren't any left in the UK.
Right. Okay. Cool. Nice to have you here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's just amazing because and that's the story that be duplicated many times over with the brown babies. I'm so proud that I have been able to show my story, which gives a lot of comfort. But I've got to say that the people I met along the journey, particularly the researcher and Sally here, and Jonathan, and of course Lucy, and I can't express how I feel now. I'm so proud, but I just want to say, if I get emotional, it's because it's amazing. And I want to say, thank you to my wife, Shirley. Along the way, there were many times I was depressed and trying to frustrate, but she always allowed me to do my thing and go off and do the thing, but always there at the back and saying, come on home and relax. And I thank you for that, Cheryl. But on the whole, it's so nice to see you here and to be able to share this moment because it's fantastic, amazing. And I hope it's excited you as much as it's pleased me to tell my story. And thank you so much for the people I met along the way. And that is my bit, very brief, but amazing.
And of course, Sally, Sally is right at the heart of the whole thing. Doing her quiet work.
Indeed. Well, look, I'm going to come to each one of you, but I want to start with you, Jonathan, because I want to know how did this come about? What was the genesis of it?
Well, it's a long story, but the short of it is I was trying to get it commissioned as a secret.
You can use the microphone.
Sorry, yeah. I was trying to get it. I first of all tried to get it commissioned. The history, sort of history documentary for Channel 4's Secret History strand, long-running series, documentary history, social history strand.
Yeah.
And it needed, for Channel 4, it needed to have somebody at the heart of the story telling the story. So that's why I was looking for a brown baby who could possibly carry the whole story, be good on camera, be comfortable on camera, be really articulate. So I found Terry, and then I knew we had a documentary. It didn't proceed with Channel 4. Then we went to the BBC with Oxford Films with a 3-part series. At that point, I had started filming because things were happening in Terry's life in terms of his search. So I knew I had to start filming. So we started filming just on a very small scale, just 2 people filming, and then we didn't go ahead with the BBC. So then I knew I had to make an independent documentary. I really didn't want to do that. Trying to raise the money, but in the end, that's how it happened, and it took a while.
And then to pack all the history in, Lisa, can I come to you because the history of the brown babies, it's something that it's not really been told. I mean, it's still not now. I mean, there was so much history. I'm a massive history buff. And so, obviously, I know that black GIs were stationed in America, and I know that there were relationships and things. But the actual, I had no idea about the race riots and things like that. Why do you think that has been, not suppressed, but why do you think it's not been at the forefront?
Well, I didn't know about it either.
You got
until-
it.
oh yeah,
Right,
sorry,
okay.
sorry.
Thank you.
I didn't know about the so-called brown babies. Incidentally, this is the term given by the African American press in the late 40s to these children initially born in Britain to black GIs and local white women. And I didn't know about them until I saw, in October 2011, I saw Mix Britannia, which is a 3-part series, which you can watch on YouTube now, which was really, really good about the whole history of mixed people in Britain. And the second one opens with George Alagaya, who very sadly is no longer alive. And he goes and meets his brother-in-law, who's one of his children, born to a black GI, and then there's another one, Brian, who's also in the program. I thought, my God, this is so interesting. I want to know more about it. At the time, I was working on something else. So 2 years later, 2013, I thought I want to see if anyone work's been done, and so little had been done. So then I started trying to find people to interview so I could hear their voices. So I was on local radio, Women's Hour, various articles in press, and slowly, and GI Trace, slowly the kind of all rolled and more people came forward. And I think, to answer your question, why was this history not known? I think these people who, or at least 2,000, probably a lot more actually, I don't know, were isolated. They were often growing up like Terry in an area where they're possibly the only person of colour. They didn't know there were others like them, or they knew one or two or whatever. So that kind of isolation meant that, that this story wasn't generally known. But also, they often had, when I started talking to people, interviewing people, it was so extraordinary that so many of them hadn't even told their families, their husband or wives or their children. It was a kind of secret that was buried down. Some certainly had and had very supportive families, but there was quite a lot who really hadn't got a name for the father, and so thought, that's it. What can I, like Arlene, who was told her father was the son of
Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong. So I think a lot of people didn't realise that there were so many of them relative. When I say so many, at the time, up until the Second World War in Britain, sort of in the late 1930s, there were only about 7,000 to 10,000 people of colour in the entire country, and they were mostly in ports like Liverpool or London or Cardiff. And then so suddenly you get these GIs, that, at least 240,000 that come in, and it does result in these children. So they really, at least 2,000. So the population does, but they're often, as I said, isolated in quite rural areas, home counties, West Coast, where there weren't, Southwest, where there hadn't been a whole tradition of a black presence like there have been in ports. So I think that sense of isolation and not knowing this story, it was, so I wrote a book called Britain's Brown Babies that came out ages ago, 2019. But, the ball has started rolling, more and more people came forward, like Darren. People who even the next generation, which is so wonderful. So how 3 or 4 generations are now all coming together and saying, this is my story. Sorry, I've gone on.
No, that's brilliant. So Sally, GI Trace, an amazing organisation. How long have you been doing it, and how many people do you think that you've found?
Okay, well, actually, about 26 years now. It's a voluntary organisation, actually, so there's no charge, no money, nothing changes hands. So we just fund it ourselves. This sounds, I don't want to sound big-headed, but for myself, I've sold over 500 cases. GI Trace itself, because it's a self-help group. 1 or 2 here I know are also from GI Trace, from my babies. In fact, I'll take you back to Lucy's book. The first time I knew about met Lucy was when you were really at the point of publishing your book. And we met in Cambridge, and she had a list there, and I thought, well, I'll go meet with Lucy. It's about finding more brown babies for your book and for carrying on your interests. And when we compared notes, or when I looked, I could see that lots of the babies that you'd got, that we'd moved forward, and we had found their birth fathers, or we were on those routes to finding it. And so that's how the relationship began with Lucy and myself, and that's how it began with Terry, because Lucy said, Terry earnestly wants to know about his birth father, John Hendricks, and you know the story, the rest of it was on the screen. And so that's really how we started. That's with GI Trace. Yes, it's a very personal search for all of the war babes, whether, well, white or black, but specifically black, because there is that common thread that runs through everybody's journey. So that's me, that's GI Trace.
It's amazing. That one scene when Terry comes to see you is just
yes.
Shirley was
flubbertastic.
there, by the way. She just
Yes, Shirley was
edited
there.
it out. Got edited out.
I could call at lunch, we sat at lunch, and I didn't want to, we weren't going to have any of the filming till the afternoon. And so we sat there, and I'd met Terry before, and when he came in, and I had the photos in my possession by then, because that's a very sensitive journey. I must tell you about those, because when it's all very well to find a name and think, wow, I think I've done it, or this is the person, but the next step has to be the most sensitive, the most careful, the most tactful, because you can absolutely blow it, which is actually what's happening a lot today, I have to tell you, with social media.
Yes.
Who wants to know on social media, hey, I think your dad was my mum's dad, doors slam and so on. So anyway, there's very many sensitive steps. So I had the evidence eventually, obviously, from Terry's niece, who was willing to pick up the ball in the States. It's after some months, because you have to create a relationship. First of all, because I could be a scam, never mind saying this is a DNA result and this is so on and so on. So there's those steps to take. And I finally had this photograph, and when I sat across from you, which I said in the film, I sat across from Terry at lunch, I can remember thinking, wow, well, I didn't need the DNA. It was just so obvious. But anyway, yeah, that was a brilliant moment.
Terry, how much this became sort of a search for identity, and how much did it become sort of to affiliate yourself with the black soldiers and the soldiers throughout history? Because I get a feeling that the more you were kind of looking for family, the more you were looking for sort of a bigger family and a bigger sort of meaning with the people who've gone before you.
Yes, I think as a young boy, we all want to do well in life, and for some reason I always tried it. Whatever I did, I used to give it my 101%, and it's just like now. I sometimes get myself into trouble by doing things too much. Or slow down, Harrison. That's what my wife sometimes says to me. But the thing was that I become sensitive because of the reaction of others as a young and I thought, well, why is everybody doing this? And I tried to be fair and understand, and it was just as I got more and more, probably angry, was probably frustrated, that I wanted to know who was it, what was my dad like, my real dad like. And as I go older, and I joined the Royal Marines, and I was quite successful, and well, who's giving me this something? But there was something missing. Something I couldn't go to my stepfather, who relationship was okay, but there's nothing. He never held my hand, and even the dad can't hold hands. Surely, can I? This sort of things I can't hold hands because I never hold hands with my stepfather. These are sort of things that affected me, and the more I then into my teens and later on in my married life, I by the way, I must say at this stage, very few people know, but I know Liam, one of my good friends in Leicester, and I have a twin sister who doesn't feature in the film, and that is the reason because the childhood we grew up in affected her so much that she became a recluse. Even today, she's not married, but that was we were really
to
close.
make that difficult decision to not include her.
But no, I'm going to say that.
That's cool.
When I talked to my sister said, look, I prefer that you do it alone because it affected her so much. But I'm grateful we still get on very well together. She knows about the film, but like me, very emotional, and it's just a lovely sister relationship. Because the one thing about my life was mother, and as Lucy said, very often the people who had children, brown babies, they were ostracized. But my mum stuck it out, and she got a lot of hassle from the villagers and banging dust mill. And of course it affects a young lad, because it affected any child. Why like that against a mum? But fortunately, I've grown up with I'm not a bitter person, in fact, because Dad's saying, you do your best, Terry, and on you get. And I've got so many friends along the way, and I say one of my best friends is Liam, who was searched with Lucy. Liam, and it's just amazing the interest and the warmth that you've shown looking at the film, because you appreciate, because we're all mature people. But going on a young lad, and the twins we did, there was 5 people in the village of colour, in a sense, and they all thought, I must tell you just one little story. I had a man in the village where I was born, named Peter Cockburn. He was a brown baby, and he was the same age, and born at the same time. And we had a showing of the film in my village, of Gasby. And I haven't seen him for 75 years, but I never forgot him. And I wanted him, I knew he was somewhere in the village when the film was being shown a few weeks ago. And as we were crossing the street in the village of Barsby, where I think I was near Gasby, and I was driving through the village, and I happened to wind out the window and said, could you tell me where Peter Cockburn lives? And believe it or not, this is God talking. The man came across, yes, I'm his son. And he came along to the event in Gasby, and he has Alzheimer's. And he sat in the chair, and at first he couldn't recognise me, but as Liam said, it was taking the film, all of a sudden he recognised me, and he had his son, and that was the most wonderful moment of my life, that being able to tell this story. He perhaps didn't understand it, but his grandchildren were there, and that was the sort of thing that we experienced. So that is what the journey have done to me. This particular film has done amazing.
And then meeting the family in America. Meeting the family in America, I mean, obviously, we see it in the film and it all happens incredibly quickly. But was it a gradual step by step? Did they need to be talked around, or were they sort of come with open arms? How did that come about?
I would say, so you can say.
Well, as I said earlier, it's sensitive baby steps to begin with. Once you've made those steps and you've introduced to the family, they say, oh, you should have come to me sooner, and so on. But there is no sooner than the proper, careful, sensitive way, as I keep saying. Thank goodness for that next generation. I say this respectfully. Older people, they may take a DNA test, but they still don't really understand it. And I've gone back to some cases, and they made that first sort of little, inroads, those things, I believe this family here. How do you know? How do you know? And the thing is, they don't understand the strength and the positive and the 100% result of DNA. Thank goodness my first contact, which I made, was not to your half-sister, but it was to your niece, who I knew would understand what I was getting at. So that's she was quite happy to be in touch, skeptical at first. That's a very natural reaction, I feel. But then, I do say this about the Americans. Once they've got you, they're up and they're running, they're taking you, and they're much more receptive and kindly, probably, than the British the other way around. And I've had reverse searches, as I call them. We are reserved as a nation, the English, so we'll always start at the bottom, and if you fit, I don't know about you. The Americans will accept you there, mostly, accept you there, and then find out about you and like you for what you are on that day one. And that's my experience in 90% of all the cases. Your niece Angela was thrilled to know in the end about you. She had to be very careful with her aunt, who, as you said, she was born 1935, 37, something like that. Elderly, she fairly sort of recently lost her husband. So, there's another thing when you're making contact. You have to know the family background before you barge in. You cannot, I'm going off.
No, this is fascinating.
Yeah, I hope so. If your father had been alive and I'd started to make contact, I would always do make sure that the wife, alive, dead, when, how many siblings, how many children, and so on and so forth, because it's that background. And only 2 searches in all my years, and not of my doing, have gone completely off the rails, and that's because the war babe, as we call you, the war babe has jumped in and made that very first contact and actually phoned. Now there's the worst thing you can do, pick up a phone, because they have no idea. You've been researching for years, we've been looking for years, they have no idea. And for somebody to say, hey, I think your dad's my dad, or your dad is my dad, or your husband is my father, and that's what happened on one occasion. On another occasion, the poor lady had just buried her husband and took the phone call. And so those 2 searchers were obviously hitting a brick wall. And as my mentor told me one time, once they've done that, there's no resurrecting those cases. And sadly, there isn't. So, I mean, you have to be very, 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 very careful. The other thing, you're not knocking on the door and saying, please, can I have 50 years of Christmas presents that you owe me and all the back benefit money my mum should have had. And the other thing, when you do make contact, I hate to say this, but you really play down the birth mother to begin with. Now, I hope that sinks in and you'll know what I mean. You are contacting an American family about the father, the birth father. And initially, you can't mention or shouldn't play up too much the fact that he had an affair in England, France, Germany, anywhere in the world, which is all the cases that I deal with. And I hope you can see that. It's just the wrong thing until they ask.
Well, I have to say, full disclosure, I was in care until I was 8 and adopted when I was 12 years old. During COVID, my birth mother got in touch with me via Facebook, which they're not supposed to do, and said, I just wanted to see you in case I die during COVID. And my adopted mother had just died, and it was suddenly like, shit, how do I deal with this? And so I understand that kind of, you don't really have a choice, so you've got to kind of go through those steps, and maybe this is one of the reasons that I feel so sort of touched by that. Jonathan, let's come back to you again. How did you structure the film? Because there are so many great moments in it whereby you seem to be there as phone calls are taken, or as news is broken, or as Terry is finding out stuff, and it's done incredibly well. But what's the sleight of hand there?
The order, some of it was happening early on. So
microphone.
Sorry, microphone. Microphone.
Yeah.
I'm going to come over there.
Some of the filming was happening. Is it on?
Yes. Yeah.
Just
Right.
have
Some of it
was
was happening. Some of the the doubts about John Hendricks were quite early on of the filming, and that was like, we had to get this, and we had to. Terry was still believing that John Hendricks was his father, and so I knew from a filmmaking point of view that was really important to get, because then we'd have a twist. And then it was, actually the thing that all documentaries now are moving much more towards is actuality, and that was very challenging.
Yeah.
To get real actuality, not to have. We had a lot of talking heads that in the first edits there was too much talking, and I needed more actuality, so it was quite tough, and we had to sort of do some extra stuff. Going back to Mattingly, but then that all added more for the story, and gave us basically 3 acts and some twists. And
One of my favourite scenes in it is when it's kind of like the brown babies all get together and they all sort of swap war stories, as it were, of how they grow up, their experiences with their families and one thing or another. Does that happen a lot? I'm asking Lucy and Sally that. Is that something that sort of, is there a community that meets up and shares stories, or was that something that was done for the doc?
It was done, Lucy?
Well, I managed to get some money from my university to have a get-together in Bristol of so-called brown babies, quite a few, as you saw. We were all around a huge table. But also, that is something that Jonathan filmed and used some of it, because it went on much, much longer. Obviously, he selected parts of it. So we wanted, we wanted people to be able to get together. I mean, this is the problem. We've had a few gets-togethers, but we have people live all around the country, and some are actually in the States and one's in Australia. They can't necessarily meet up with us, but we can meet soon. But having an actual get-together is fantastic. So we managed it on a few occasions. So Shamin, where is Shamin from the Mixed Museum? Shamin. So she managed to get some money to have this big DNA project, and the money enabled us to have actual physical meetings, one in London, one a whole weekend in Cambridge. That was only a year or two ago, wasn't it, Shamin? So that has been amazing, and we now do have smaller gets-together because the whole thing is expanding, so there is, in a sense, a community, and a lot of people do feel it's like a big, wide family. It's really, really expanded. But the one in Birmingham, not Birmingham, sorry, Bristol, yeah, that was very emotional actually, because people went, I just said let people go round and tell their story, but I don't think people quite knew, what was going to happen or quite how it was going to turn out. So we have Elaine is in that, who understandably gets quite emotional about what happened in relation to her mother being sent to this terrible Magdalene home. But luckily, what you didn't say in the programme, but you told me, and it's in the book, that she was part of is this right? Her mother was part of a big family.
My grandfather was one of 13, and yes.
Can you start from the beginning there? Yeah.
My grandfather was one of 13 children, and my Aunt Flo, his oldest sister, when she found out from the family that my father would send my mum to this awful place in Islington, she said to him, unless you bring Margaret home, you're no longer a member of this family. So,
Wow.
Thank goodness for that. So, yeah, my grandma's little sister went to get my mum, and my grandfather was the first one to push me down the street from the train.
So that was really lucky, but nearly half the people, I believe, well, certainly the half the people I've interviewed, but also people I've talked to subsequently, were put in homes.
Right.
And you said yourself was put in children, and that could be, especially in those earlier days, pretty tough. I mean, I think, well, you can tell that your story, but this is in the late 40s and 50s. They were often quite brutal, a lot of corporal punishment. I keep nearly saying capital punishment, obviously not the case, but
only once.
it was pretty dire. Yeah, but so it's great, I mean, some actually, survived it, and well, they did survive it and have done very well, but I think it was pretty hard for a lot of them. So those who were kept, I mean, Terry was kept, and had a loving mother, but he had a difficult time, as we've heard.
May I mention just two cases in Suffolk?
Of course,
because I've never mentioned these before, but I'm allowed to. This was obviously black troops were based all over, and there was units in Suffolk. And this is quite a sad story. Because they were sort of very rural, Suffolk has a reputation for being even less perhaps accepting, certainly back then. And one black baby was brought up by his grandparents, but never went to school, was kept indoors, and mostly hid when people came round. And the same thing happened with another little girl. She was brought up by her mother and her grandparents. She did go to school, but she was sort of locked away when she came home. And eventually those two children met. And I only know about this story because their son, they had one son, they met and married. Their one son came to me wanting to know more about perhaps, obviously, their relative birth fathers. There was quite a lot of black family out there to find. And sadly, they couldn't go forward with any of it. They had been so traumatized by their upbringing, and even the son couldn't convince them, and in the end they convinced the son, does this sound weird, not to take the journey any further, to find any family. They wanted to live in their reclusive nature in Suffolk. To me, that's one of the very saddest stories. But they did find each other. I guess there's something there.
going to move on to questions in a second, but I've got another one for you, Terry, and that is knowing the history of the black soldiers. I mean, the Nuremberg laws that are passed in Germany in 1933, sort of, which are kind of the racial laws that sort of segregate the Jews. Germany actually looked to America and based some of their laws on the segregation laws in America. So, I mean, which is so weird. The injustice for a lot of the black soldiers who are coming over fighting for their country and one thing and another. You actually go into the military yourself, and you must have an awareness of how the black soldiers fought in the Second World War, went home to Jim Crow and the segregation and everything that we saw. And we hear that sort of life in the military for black people in the 70s and 80s could sometimes be quite tough. How did you find it?
Well, as I say, I went in quite blind and quite naive in many ways, but when I joined the Royal Marines, I was joined at 16, and I did fairly well. I got what you call the Sword of Honour at the end of the year for the best Royal Marine at that time. And as I grew, later on, I went to the Philippines with the ship on a military ship, and I was asked if I would do a transfer for 3 months to American aircraft I call the Kitty Hawk. You may have heard it's one of the largest aircraft in the world. And I got the Green Beret, I'm very proud sergeant. Off I went, and an American sergeant came across to my ship. Was there 3 months, and I recognised the difference because even there was about 4,000 people on the ship. It's like a miniature village, and they used to have the black table and the white table, even in the military. And I remember going to the sergeant's mess where all the white sergeants were on, the black sergeant. I thought, I'm not in this. And I deliberately went and sat by the white, and not one white sergeant asked me to move. He thought probably I'm a Royal Marines Commando. But it wasn't that. It was the fact that I was full of pride, and I was saying, this is my place. And after the 3 months was up, I was asked if I wanted to transfer by the captain of the ship permanently to the American Marines. And that's an emphasis. That's a wonderful, and it is folly of all these people are prejudiced. But in the Marines, I found it's all teamwork. You know, when we talk about orders, we have to follow a set order so that when we're doing an attack, everyone knows what the procedures are, etc. But before, I must finish just 1 minute before I make. My sister Deborah, the one you saw in the photograph about me telling how my cars were growing, sadly she died about 6 weeks ago. She'd never seen the film, but she was part of it. But the one joy I had is that, Shirley will tell you, in America the time difference, it doesn't matter so Deborah. So in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, I get a call, and I could see it as a different number. And about 4 or 5 times a week, at 2 o'clock in the morning, hello Terry, this is Deborah. And that's the memory I have of that.
Thank you all for. I'm going to throw it open to the floor now. You're probably going to have to stand up and shout.
We're just about 2 minutes now.
2 minutes now. Right. Okay. Sorry. Right. Okay. Good. Who's got a question? And for who? Yes. Lady at the back, and then this man here. So, just keep your hand up, please, madam. And if you pass that microphone down to her swiftly, thank you.
So, I don't even know where to begin. I'm kind of lost for words. My name is Rihanna, and I found my Ghanaian dad and family last year. So, watching this film, it brought a lot of emotions for me, personally, and I'm so glad that you got that happy ending, to be honest, Terry. I think you needed that, your family needed that, your inner child needed that. And my question is, how do you show up now that you understand where you come from? Like, where are you hoping to take this? How does it kind of reflect in the work that you do, in the way that you show up in your different relationships? I would be really interested to know. Thank you.
Well, I think one of the things that life is meant to be enjoyable. And I'm a positive person, and the one thing I can say is I feel complete as a dad, a human being, and that, I think that is the biggest thing in my life knowing my father has made my life complete. And I don't know how I've got left on this earth, but I'm happy now.
I'm truly impressed, very, very impressed by the teamwork. And this question is for you, Jonathan. So this amazing feat, no doubt, you know, it's difficult to do. I know that. You told me it's difficult to make it. To document like this. You probably thought about even giving up. Maybe some of you thought about giving up. No. What is, all of you quickly, what would be your advice to someone trying to do such a project again?
Jonathan.
Mike, Jonathan.
Jonathan.
I mean, the thing about this is all of the contributors, you know, that everyone was willing this on. I mean, I couldn't do this. I mean, the idea of doing this on my own, I mean, you can't. You're reliant on everyone else. So it was always the feedback. Everybody wanted this to happen, and everyone wanted this to be completed. And we literally had to do, we got so difficult financially, we had to do a whip round where we all had to put money into it. So there was always the willingness. And people, you know, I always shared everything. I would show people clips when we had the first cut. Everyone saw the first cut. So everyone knew, you know, at every point that they were part of this and they were collaborators. So I think that was the thing that got us there.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, round of applause, everybody. Thank you for this amazing film. Thank you so much for hosting. To everyone who came. We can carry on the conversation a little while out in the bar. Please do stop by our table, pick up a little souvenir from today and sign up for our newsletter. And we would love you to get your phones out and click the QR code. And please give us some feedback on the film and the experience of being here for a London Breeze event. And we hope to see you again. Thank you. Thank you to Garden Cinema for having us in their beautiful space as well.
We're neighbours and friends.